Hi, I'm Julia, and this is the News Brief. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Easter truce and potential US withdrawal from the peace talks or negotiations. And then we're going to discuss it together in the comments so you don't have to suffer alone and I don't have to suffer alone. So please leave your questions, suggestions, constructive criticism, anything that might be on your mind, because I love hearing from you. Let's go. So the current US administration is apparently very tired of the Ukraine-Russia conflict because this thing has dragged on way too long. Trump, Rubio, Witkoff, we feel you. We are also very tired of this war, not a conflict, and there is a very sure way to end it, and that is to demilitarize Russia and tell them to GTFO from our territory. But go off. So the second part of this is that the US basically said that they're going to withdraw from the negotiations as a threat if one side blocks peace talks and isn't ready to settle. If for some reason one side causes major delay, then according to Trump, the US is just going to say, "You are stupid, we are done." Which is super helpful, obviously, in negotiations. Anyways, which side do you think they're trying to force into saying that so they can paint as the evil, evil place that did not agree to the ceasefire and peace talks negotiations, provided that the conditions of this new peace negotiations that are supposed to happen literally today in London are that Ukraine will never join NATO, Trump wants Ukraine to recognize Crimea as Russian, and a plethora of other ludicrous things that are never going to happen. So, of course, guess who's being set up for failure here? I wonder. Well, while Trump is threatening that the US is going to withdraw from negotiations, I feel like all of us here in Ukraine and around the rest of the world, aka Europe and all of our other allies, are waiting impatiently for the US to exit the negotiations, because since they've started helping Ukraine and Russia end this war, they have only made things worse. If you look at the facts, basically, Putin has started hammering Ukraine with more missiles and drones than ever since the beginning of these so-called peace talks, and since the American side at the helm with Trump, Witkoff, and Marco Rubio has basically given Putin all the green flags to act out by only pushing Ukraine to surrender, only pushing Ukraine to agreements, and basically trying to give Putin everything he wants. So when you are threatening to withdraw from the negotiations, what we have to say here is, please do. Because we are also tired of this war being so dragged out, and we are also tired of these not negotiations but ultimatums and consistent meddling by the US, because we are also tired of this war being dragged on, and we're also tired of being forced into the worst possible position. If we wanted to surrender, we could have done that without the US holding its hand over us. Well, in lieu of the US wanting to exit the negotiations, obviously Russia doesn't want that because it's been so favorable to Russia. They have decided to make some progress, and Putin, the fantastic, lovely Christian, such a strong Christian that he is, he offered an Easter truce, which was a diplomatic victory for him, because look at what a good guy he is. Look at how amazingly he's trying to handle it. He wants, all of the soldiers on both sides to enjoy Easter and for everything to be holy and jolly and good. Right? And of course, the US picked it up, especially the American media. They were transmitting Russia's Easter services from Moscow. They were transmitting Russia's Easter services from St. Petersburg. And they were also on Fox News transmitting apparently Russia's Easter services from Kyiv, because Fox News, Trump favorable and very right leaning network historically, showed an Easter service at a church in Kyiv and said, "Kyiv, Russia." Yeah, so if you thought that the US can't fall any lower, it has. Not only has it been talking about this Easter truce as something phenomenally fantastical that Putin did out of the kindness of his heart, and look at his great adherence to Christian traditions, they have also, at this point, called Kyiv, Russia, quite a few times, as well as Dnipro, they have called Russia a month ago. And they didn't even call it Dnipro, they called it Dnipropetrovsk, which is a city that doesn't exist neither in Russia nor in Ukraine. It's Dnipro. Anyways, I digress quite hard, but this Easter truce gave Putin a lot of diplomatic cred with the US because it makes him look like he's trying to make progress, right? And it's Ukraine that isn't taking it. The Easter truce in reality wasn't truce at all. Russia used that time in order to rotate their troops. They used that time in order to make supply routes better. They used that time to move around heavy equipment and machinery. And while there was a temporary ceasefire at the areas of the front, which again still wasn't really a ceasefire, Russia was hammering down on Ukraine with drones and missiles like there is no tomorrow. A few minutes after this Easter truce kicked in, there was an air raid in Kyiv, there was an airstrike on Kryvyi Rih, there was an airstrike on Sumy again. There were airstrikes all over Ukraine with multiple victims. Also, Russia struck a university campus building in Ukraine and admitted to doing so and admitted to it being civilian infrastructure during Easter. But there was an award ceremony for military personnel that committed war crimes in Kursk, and therefore they received their revenge and retribution. Well, the military was okay. The civilians were the one that suffered, and it was the center of the city that Russia hit. So, no matter how much they try to justify it, in reality, there was no Easter truce, because Easter truce would mean that Putin wouldn't be striking civilians trying to enjoy this godly holiday. But those attacks, they intensified hardcore, of course. Anyways, I mean, Russia took this weekend, Easter weekend, not as a religious holiday, but as an opportunity to spread their propaganda as far and as wide as they can, especially when it comes to the United States. They returned 277 POWs to Ukraine, which obviously is a big win for this country, but at the same time, it is just a PR move for Putin. Returning POWs, offering a truce that really never happened because it was never adhered to. Russia broke it 3,000 times in the past weekend alone. But it's a great move to prevent the US pulling out from brokering this deal because, of course, as I said priorly, this deal is very good for Putin. And the US hasn't really been a special envoy to Ukraine and Russia. They have really been a special envoy to Russia, and they have been doing everything possible for Russia to win and everything possible for Russia to come out of this deal on the best conditions available. I mean, hey, recognizing Ukrainian territories as Russian, no one's going to do that. From what I'm understanding, everyone, including Ukrainians and Europeans, are waiting for the US to actually finally pull out of this so Europe can actually step up and take action because in our part of the world, no one is going to be agreeing to officially recognizing the temporarily occupied territories due to Russian aggression as Russian. That is a non-negotiable, that is not anything that could ever happen, and that shouldn't even be on the table. Meanwhile, Zelensky said that we are ready to commit to an actual ceasefire, and that if Russia is ready to actually commit to a silence and to a ceasefire, and he means really commit to that, which is not to strike civilian infrastructure and not to strike Ukraine's infrastructure or really anything in general, if this silence is achieved, Ukraine is ready to extend it and Ukraine is going to respond in kind. But unfortunately, no matter how many times Putin has been saying this, there was no silence. Ukraine actually offered Russia a 30-day unconditional ceasefire for civilian infrastructure, and Russia said that they would think about it. I mean, as someone who really wants a truce, I don't see why they would need to think about not striking civilian infrastructure. But that's also a very clever move on Zelensky's behalf because Putin has now admitted to striking civilian infrastructure, which normally they try to justify it by saying there was some military action or it was actually a hidden military site or a preschool was actually, a lab where they developed drones or something. But now, with Zelensky requesting this 30-day unconditional ceasefire on striking civilian infrastructure and Russia responding as they will think about it. They basically didn't even realize it, but they confirmed that they have been striking civilian infrastructure this entire time, which is not funny, obviously, but is a kind of a funny move. So yeah, while this Easter weekend is over and Putin's so-called ceasefire is over, there is going to be a new round of peace talk negotiations today in London. So by the next episode, we're going to find out what's going to happen. But I can tell you right away that we're going to be seeing the same Russia favorable rhetoric, and we're going to, well, not achieve anything. And to be honest, at this point, I personally, and a lot of people share this opinion, are hoping that the US is not going to achieve anything in these peace talks and is going to pull out of the deal during it. Because honestly, at this point, we're not really getting military aid, we're not receiving any help, and it's very clear from the rhetoric on Fox News calling Kyiv Russia and, praising Putin for giving Trump a portrait of himself, and people talking about the great Russian Empire, and generally the US government being incredibly Russia favorable. These negotiations are not doing anything for Ukraine. It's just a very veiled push to surrender, and it's wrapped into this peace talks negotiations wrapping paper. But in reality, it really is just the US pushing Ukraine. Well, before that, it was just Russia pushing Ukraine. So, yeah, we really don't need that. But as Zelensky said during his Easter address, evil has its hour, good has its day. Meaning that, of course, evil has its time, but it's just an hour. But when good defeats the evil, it's going to have its day. So it's going to prevail for much longer. And that's something that I hope you will stick with. And that's the hope that you will hold on to. And that's it for me for today. Thank you for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on all of your notifications so you don't miss when the next episodes come out. Also, like this video, send it to a friend, and of course, comment your thoughts, suggestions, questions, anything in your mind. I read all of it and I enjoy staying in touch with you, and I will see you next time.